Alrighty, Tuesday, February 27th, a quick session recap here. So coming into the sesh, much like I mentioned during yesterday's session recap, what we wanted to really see for today was how ES was going to respond to this zone right through here. That's the 50-75 level of interest and the prior all-time high, treating that as a support zone where we expected buying activity, where we expected buyers to step in. Now, coming into the session, you can see that overnight action, that pre-market action, just kind of oscillating there near that 50-75 level of interest. Not a big bounce. We do have some sustained buying there, sustained buying interest versus that 50-75, but the challenge for buyers, at least in the very near term, meaning the past 2 to 3 sessions, was this series of lower highs. That was a structure that was definitely not favoring buyers. And so when we actually kind of look at the 15-minute here or even the 30-minute chart, what you're going to see, again, in more detail is that series of lower highs. So price, initially, we do have a bounce versus that 50-75 area during the overnight session. Look at the regular trading hours market open, right? Just a sell-off right off the open. Some buying interest versus the prior day low, but overall, I'm just considering this choppy, super choppy conditions. Volume kind of confirms. If we take a look at volume here, one of the thresholds that I like to use is 5K on the 2-minute chart. If volume is below 5K on the 2-minute chart, you're most likely going to have a slower session or at the very least much choppier conditions. And we started to get those signals very early in the session, which for me is usually going to be a red flag. Usually tells me to either be doing less, use tighter stops, right? Make sure I'm staying more nimble. Don't really like to be trading that actively in the chop, or just focus on NQ, focus on something else. So ultimately, price intraday, we do have that downtrend. Again, just looking at no trend lines needed. We can just look at market structure. Series of lower highs, responsive buyers here versus that 50-75, but ultimately resolves lower. Now, this is what we like to see when we get into that key area of support. Big time buying interest, and look at the volume. Volume really painted the picture there to mark the session low in the key area. That we were looking for, and that was, again, that 50-66.5. Happened later in the session, right around that 7-year auction that we had right there at about 1 p.m. And that marks the session low. So pretty strong action following that 7-year auction. Once price was actually able to resolve lower, you find a lot more responsive buyers down into this area of support. Now, once this low is made, you can kind of see the 5-minute signal there as well as the 15-minute. Once that low is made, look how much easier the longs are, right? So what you don't want to do is be fighting longs all morning into what is clearly an intraday downtrend. You're just going to find yourself with limited gains and most likely a headache. If not, at the very least, some frustration because those longs aren't showing any follow through. Much easier to just let price resolve lower, test that key area of support. This is why I always harp on trade location. You want to be trading with great location. You want the wind in your sails, right? And so once we have that test of support, you see big time responsive buyers again, backed by volume, key details. Good signal bar on the 2-minute. You don't really even need to nail the low, right? Can wait for a higher low to develop. There's a lot of ways to be getting involved with this, but the point is that once that low is marked and we actually have a really strong signal, not only on the 2-minute, but the 5-minute and the 15-minute as well, in that key area where we were expecting buyers, all the longs are much easier. So if you are trying longs through here and maybe you make a mistake with your entry, maybe you have some type of, execution error or anything like that, price is going to be much more forgiving than it would be through here. So you could be trading, 50-77.75 later in the afternoon and trading that same level over here. You're going to have a much harder time earlier in the morning versus later in the afternoon, even though it's the same price. It's because the expected value on this side of the day, on this side of the bounce, is much greater, simply because, again, how price resolved lower, tested that key area of support, and then you have big time responsive buyers. So the question now is, can buyers now show a change in character of this, what is now going to be a 3-session downtrend? So the high was marked on Friday, right? Monday you have a lower high. Today you have a lower high. What buyers are really looking for now is pretty much a break of this morning's pre-market high, overnight high, and sustained action above that 50.90. Ideally sustained action up through 5100 to breach this high, and then price can retest the all-time high. So that's kind of going to be the main watch for tomorrow, really watching how price trades versus this 50.90 area, essentially what could be called today's session high. Now, we did get the responsive buyers where we expected them. We want to see how this structure continues to develop from here, if buyers are going to take control. On NQ, setup is slightly different. Let's jump over to that. Trading within a near-term range here. This was a failed breakout up through here on Friday, right? That's your daily time frame resistance. That's the prior all-time high. NQ attempts to break out, fails, and now it's just settled into what could be considered a near-term range. Again, just like we talked about this morning in the pre-market prep live stream, this kind of reference point through here, the near-term volume point of control, that's where all of the volume has traded, volume through price, not volume through time. That's where all the volume is traded through this near-term range. And so that can usually be used as a reference point when you're trading within a range. But remember, the best opportunities in a range, where are they? They're at the edges of the range. And that's exactly what we saw in NQ today as well. Very similar to ES in that regard. If you take a look at price testing that near-term range low down into our 17,900 level of interest, pretty much marks the low for the session, and prices back up into that near-term reference point, that mid-range reference point, the volume point of control right through there. So the question now on NQ, right, we're clearly into an area of resistance right through here. Can buyers force the break of this resistance to retest that 18,100 level, 18,120 area? So that'll be the main watch for NQ. What I really want to see, again, is if this afternoon's buying can show continuation up through essentially the pre-market high, right through there, 18,040. So that'll be the watch for NQ. It's ES, pretty similar. I see ES pressing into session highs now. Let's take a look at this intraday chart. Yeah, just making a fresh session high into the close here. So about to force that change of character here on the 15-minute chart. We'll see how that develops into the overnight session, but buyers really responsive right where we expected it. As far as individual names, we're looking at Carvana. This thing has just been a monster. On watch again today for the third day in a row. We like strength above that 71 to test 76 and 80. Another monster move in Carvana, breaking the recent highs, looking for a continuation play here. Remember, Carvana, short float, 35%. Absolutely massive. LI, there's a continuation play as well. Traded it yesterday. That earnings gap, right? Post earnings gap and go, another gap and go today. Let's see how tomorrow morning looks, but this is still a continuation play on LI, so that's on watch. And then we have 2 second-day trades on watch. That's going to be Unity Software, ticker symbol U, trading down into weekly support. Looking for the second-day play there, and then ZM, second-day play. Not much follow-through on ZM today. Not all that surprising given the location. But a pretty nice list to work with for Wednesday. Hope everyone had a great session, profitable session. Didn't get too caught up in the chop this morning. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a direct message in the Traders Think Tank. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning for the pre-market prep live stream. Have a great evening.